Welcome to Career Tools. This week, working on an aeroplane, part 3. The questions this cast answers are, do I have to work on business-related flights? What should I work on a business-related flight? And how should I prepare for working on a business-related flight? If you've been waiting to meet us in person, here's your March dates. Philadelphia on the 7th and 8th, Phoenix on the 14th and 15th, Silicon Valley on the 21st and 22nd, and in DC on the 28th until the 30th. For the first 3 dates, we're doing an Effective Manager Conference and an Effective Communicator Conference. In DC, we're doing both of those and an Effective Hiring Manager Conference. So if you haven't got your training settled for this year, or you are waiting for, the end of the first quarter, it's time to get registered. Just go to our website and look for training in the menu bar. The last part of this 3-part series is about getting your equipment ready. So this is making sure you have what you need when you get to the aeroplane so that you can do the work that you planned to do. So before you leave home or a hotel to fly anywhere, and or before you actually board the flight, there's a bunch of practical things you can do to get ready. And a bunch of these came from our presenters who fly a lot. So Andrew, some of these are yours, right?
Yeah, flying as much as we do, just traveling as much as we do, you learn, right? You learn
the hard way.
Sometimes the hard way. And I've found it's really helpful. There's almost a camaraderie among the presenters of sharing all these little things like, oh, here's this thing that I learned, or here, this is my experience today. And so hopefully these things are ways that, frequent flyers, people who travel so much for work can kind of impart our experience and our knowledge onto you and help for those of you who may not fly as frequently as us. So we talked a lot in our previous casts about you can't prepare or you can't plan for having ideal working conditions, but what you can plan for is your stuff, the things that are within your control. And so just some simple, practical things. This is almost going to feel like a checklist, and it should, because each of us that are traveling has a checklist. We all have a checklist that we go through and make sure this is what's, ready, and this is what's in my bag, and this is where it is, and we pack the same way every time. And yeah, we're pretty fastidious about this. Okay, so first and foremost, charge everything. Charge your laptop, charge your phone, charge your tablet. If you have headphones, AirPods, anything that's, Bluetooth that's charge everything that requires power. Now, this means if you're departing from home, that's pretty easy. You can make sure that everything is charged. You have a lot more time, lead time, and so forth. You know where you charge things and your outlets and all that. But if you're leaving from a hotel, if you're if you're returning, then you have to consider, this takes a little bit of planning. You have to consider how many outlets you have in your hotel room.
Yeah, and where they are in relation to anything you might want to rest your device on, because it's never convenient.
Exactly. So you have to have all of that. Now, some hotels are, upgrading and becoming more technologically advanced. And so they have USB ports and they have, outlets. And so some of I've even seen have the new USB, the USB-C. Or USB-C, yes. So there's lots of options in some hotels. But some hotels, you have your normal 2 outlets and you have to consider, what wall blocks you have and where, all of that. So just know when you're charging, make sure you head to the airport with everything fully charged. Additionally, have one of those external batteries, those power packs, USB, batteries, and make sure that's fully charged. You want to have that available as well. You also want to have additional cables. Now, I'm guilty of this. I like traveling streamlined, but where I won't sacrifice is cables. Now, do I have several devices that take one kind of cable? Yeah. I have a cable for each device. which gives me two things. I can charge everything at once if I need to, and I have redundancy in case something happens, one breaks, something goes wrong. Even the best, most high quality cables sometimes have defects. Yeah, exactly. So you want to have a cord for everything. And keep in mind that, in some cases you may want to have two cords depending on what it is. But trust me, don't fall into the trap of consolidating cords and thinking, I have one isn't that cool? I can save from 2 or 3 cords because I have just one cord for 3 devices. Don't fall into that trap.
And those cords where there's one bit you plug in and then it splits, so you apparently can charge 3 devices from the same cord, those never work, because what you're doing is dividing the amount of electricity by 3, and so it takes 3 times as long.
Yeah. I've never had good luck with those. I don't even mess with them anymore. I've seen people on planes that have been using them, but they're never using them for multiple devices. They're only using them for one device. And then I think, well, you could just have one cord for that. You don't need all those extra things hanging around. But I digress. Okay. Sync your devices. So make sure before you head to the airport that you've synced all your devices. This may be the last time that some of your devices are on Wi-Fi. Keep in mind, even when you're on a plane, if you upgrade or buy the Wi-Fi, it's limited to a number of devices. So you want to make sure you've synced everything on your devices in terms of files, app updates. I've never had this happen, knock on wood, but I always get paranoid that I'm going to need my app, my, American app, and then I didn't update it, and it's, a critical update, it's no longer functional. Oh my goodness. I get so terrified of something like that happening. So sync everything, make sure that you have the latest version of everything that you're going to work on. Backup devices. Make sure that you run your backups and then secure your devices. If you typically, because you don't travel a lot, you only use your device at home or in the office, and so you don't have a encryption or a PIN code on it, change that. Secure it somehow so that someone else can't get into it if you were to misplace it or lose it. So secure it.
And you think that you won't lose it, but if you look up the statistics, there is an astounding number of laptops and devices that are lost and stolen at airports every day. And I started to go down this rabbit hole, and there's a whole lot of debate about what the number is. But if you think about the number of people traveling, even if 0.01% of people lose something, it's still a massive number of people losing things.
Not only is it a massive number, but it's guaranteed more people than went to the airport planning on losing something.
Yes.
No one plans on losing something.
Absolutely. Yeah, of course. And the TSA says that if you put your contact details on the outside of a device, so on the back of a device, they will attempt to get that device back to you. And they remove the hard drives and destroy them after 30 days if you haven't claimed it. But not everybody who finds your laptop is going to be as good as the TSA or as helpful.
No.
Some of those people are trying to obtain laptops in airports, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the TSA has a website you can use to see if your device has been found. And most airports have a lost and found department, but none of that guarantees you're going to get your device back in the same state that you left it, wherever you left it. And one more thing, if you leave your device on the airplane and you've left the aircraft, a lot of the
as soon
time
as you walk out the door,
they will not let you go back to your seat.
No.
For security reasons.
I had someone who was right in front of me walk out the door. I mean, literally just past the threshold of the door, stepped both feet on the jet bridge and said, "Oh, I forgot. I think he had left his phone on the seat." And he said, "Oh, I got to grab my phone." And they adamantly said, "No, sir, you cannot get back on the plane. We'll get it for you. Get back on the jet bridge. You cannot. It's federal law. You can't get back on the plane." And he was like, whoa, sorry, I didn't realize. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's a big deal. So once you leave your seat, once you get off that plane, have all your stuff because you can't get back on.
Yeah. And that seat back pocket is a black hole.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Oh, always carry. They take up so little space. And I'm big on maximizing space when I travel, but I always have a pair of non-powered corded headphones. Old school headphones.
Right. Welcome to the
that had a
1990s.
cord, right? Yeah, those weird things that people, don't use anymore. Have a pair just in case. It's always good to have something as a backup.
And a lot of devices don't have the right holes to plug those things into anymore. And you might think, okay, so I don't need any because my phone doesn't have one of those. It only works on Bluetooth. But imagine you go to head office, your phone stops working, and somebody says, oh, I have a spare one. You can just take it to get home with. And that one doesn't, it's an old one. And so it has the socket, but it doesn't have Bluetooth or whatever you need. Yeah, like you said, it takes up no space. And you can't imagine the situations in which you might need it. But when you do, you'll be incredibly grateful that you have it.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. The next one it might be a little controversial. Don't use your phone. Now, when I say don't use your phone, I think what we're saying is your phone should not be the device that you're working on, that you're trying to, check emails from, all of that stuff. You want to save the battery life on your phone for more important things when you arrive and you need to get an Uber, or you need to check voicemails or return calls.
Right. Saving the phone for the things that only the phone can do.
Yes, exactly. That's a great point. Yeah, we want to save our phone battery. So we say simplistically, right? Don't use your phone on the flight for any of that other stuff, right? That you could use something else for. Organize your briefcase or your handbag or whatever your personal item is the same way every time. So make sure that it's organized in a way that makes sense. Now, when I say makes sense, I mean there are certain pockets on a briefcase or on a handbag or a travel bag that are more easily accessible than others, especially when it's wedged underneath a seat in front of you. And so, my briefcase has a zipper pocket that's just one line across, which I can easily reach in, get stuff out of. So that's where I keep the small things that I know I'm going to need or I can easily access. But then there's a larger zipper that goes more around the sides that I could get to if I didn't pull it out underneath the seat, but I usually have to pull it out to get to whatever I need to get to. So be strategic about what you put in which pockets and make sure that that's organized accordingly. And pack it the same way every single time. So you know exactly where things are. You don't have to think about it. The less thought process you have to put into where things are, the more thought process you can put into the work that you're doing to be more productive. There are tons of options for electronics organizers, bag organizers. There's lots of stuff out there. One of the things that I've seen that is brilliant is the inside of my briefcase is black. It's all dark. I've seen a lot of travel bags now and some of these organizer inserts that are brightly colored so that when you open it, you can see more of what's inside. Because if you're looking for one of 4 black cords inside a black briefcase on a airplane where they've dimmed the lights, good luck.
Yeah,
okay?
Exactly.
It's going to be a disaster, right? Even more the reason you should pack it the same way every time so you know exactly where that thing is. But if you have the ability to get an organizer or choose a bag that has, I think they call it a visibility liner now, where you can see it or you can see more easily inside, that's even better, right? Get something like that. That's great. That's what you want from having your equipment ready.
If you're an executive or a middle manager who's struggling to be effective in their role, and you'd like help with a particular problem or guidance about achieving your professional goals, you'll be excited to learn that Mark Horstman, our co-founder and now board member, will be offering executive coaching. Now that Mark isn't running the day-to-day business of Manager Tools, he has more bandwidth to give you the time and quality needed. It's typically a 5-month minimum commitment. And if you'd like to learn more, reach out to Maggie at manager-tools.com and she can share all the details with you.
Now we're going to talk about choosing the most suitable type of work.
We've said you might not have power, you might not have a device, you might have a small space, and thinking about what work I can do in those conditions, there's a limited amount of work that will be done well in those conditions. And we want you to have a plan and a backup plan, because you can have a plan for the best of conditions. I get to first class, they upgrade me, there's nobody sitting next to me, the Wi-Fi is amazing, there's no weather, the flight attendant brings me coffee on the regular, it's awesome. But the likelihood of that happening is low, and so you have to plan for the worst case scenario as well. And probably you'll end up somewhere in between, and you'll be able to get more done than your worst case scenario and less than your perfect scenario.
For example, a poor choice to make when trying to work on an airplane would be doing complex spreadsheet work. Because first, you're working on a small screen, presumably a smaller screen than you would normally work from in terms of your desktop, right? And then if you're working on something that is complex and you're in a potentially distracting environment, or maybe it's that you are not necessarily distracted the whole time, but you can't predict the interruptions, right? So the interruptions, because you don't travel very often, are, oh yeah, I forgot they do, a safety announcement. Oh, okay. Well, I mean, try not to listen to that, but I'm supposed to. So, or you don't realize that once you're above 10,000 feet and then they, turn off the seatbelt sign, that the impending beverage service is coming, right? And so then you're going to be interrupted again. If you don't know all of those things, you're just going to be interrupted and you may not be able to concentrate on something that is complex like that. The third, the potential for losing work is higher than it is when you're on the ground due to power instability, Wi-Fi, because of turbulence, have to immediately stow your laptop or something like that. Forgetting to press save when, they do come around with food and you're famished and you go, oh my gosh, and you just close and, say, pretzels. I got to have.
So you're not concentrating and you press the red thing and it says, do you want to save? And you go, no. And then the moment afterwards, your stomach goes through the floor and you think, oh no, I've just lost an hour's worth of work.
Yeah. And most of those functions for recovery take a lot of bandwidth and power that you may not have on the airplane.
So don't plan to work on anything that's confidential on a flight, because, let's see, the likelihood of the person sitting next to you being a competitor who's able to understand and use the information that they read over your shoulder is low, right? But why take the risk? And if you are traveling to head office or an industry conference, the likelihood of that person being able to use the information goes up because they're flying to the same place as you. They're probably in the same industry as you. There's information there. Plus, people get on flights to places where they know head offices are to find out if they can find something out. What do they call that?
Corporate espionage.
Corporate espionage. It's real. Yes.
It's real.
Yeah. And you might think you're anonymous. I was in the queue at Starbucks at DFW, and the person in front of me had a rucksack on, and she had her name badge on the outside of the rucksack, and also the conference she'd just gone to. I was like, I can do all sorts of things with that information if I'm feeling evil.
If you were a nefarious type of individual.
Yeah, so you think you're anonymous, but those company logoed pens you're using or the badge that you have, the luggage labels, often people will write their address on it, which is fine if you lose it, but everybody can read it too. So try and turn it over so just your name's on it, because the person who finds it is going to take the label out and see if it's on the other side. Flight attendants, especially when you're in first class, will greet you by name. So they'll say, good afternoon, Mr. Spillman. And everybody around you knows that that's who you are. You have to show your ticket and your identification at security. Add an airport full of people and not knowing where you're going and unsecured Wi-Fi, and you can start to see how easy it is for people to get information that they want from you without you ever knowing.
Oh, and even if you've taken all those precautions at the gate, if the gate agent before your boarding would passenger Andrew Spillman, please come to the desk. Well, if you get up and you go walk over there, 100 people now know your name is Andrew Spillman.
Yes.
And you've done everything, you've taken every precaution you could possibly do, and there's still some way that someone could know who you are.
And I thought you were about to say something else, which is in some airplanes, you have to gate check your bag. So you have to leave your carry-on outside the aircraft while you get on the aircraft, and every other passenger walks past it. Now, you know, I bet a very low percentage of those go missing, but they could go missing.
As soon as it's separated from your person, there's a chance.
Exactly. And I read when I was reading about corporate espionage, apparently people are known to borrow your device, get the information they want it, and then be the one who returns it to you. So that they, you know, you'll be in Starbucks, they'll take it out of your bag and then put it back, and you never know because they're good at it. Yeah. Or you go to the bathroom and you say to the person next to you, I always think this is really, it makes no sense that we do this, but we do it. The person next, please can you watch my stuff? And you trust a complete stranger over all of the other complete strangers in the building. Right. It makes no sense that we do that. And who knows what that person is doing. So, you know, the majority of people are nice people doing nice things. But there's enough people who are nefarious for you to need to take some precautions.
Yeah. You'd hate to find yourself in this situation where you're on the wrong side of it.
And, you know, I might not be worried about the corporate information that's on my laptop, but I bet you've got some personal information on there too. I bet you've got your children's names in an email. I bet you've got an email from the school, pictures on your iPhone, on your phone or your tablet of your children. Like, if you're not worried about the corporate stuff, let's worry about your family and someone's ability to know their names, where they go to school and what they look like.
Absolutely. And don't plan to work on any work that requires a connection with a system on the ground. Even if you can get a stable connection, the Wi-Fi may not even be fast enough to process what you need to process. It may not be fast enough to make the results worth the time and effort that you're putting in for that. So save that work for a better time and place.
Don't plan to work on anything that will send you to sleep, which is not a comment on your productivity or the boringness of your work. And we're not being facetious. Often the cabin light is low. And I was thinking about this and I realized they do it on purpose because if you're asleep, you're not bothering them. You're the perfect passenger if you're asleep. So, if the cabin light's low and you're reading something on your lap, your eyes are looking downward and your brain is starting to get a clue that you might want to be asleep. And then there's the drone of the engines and the early morning that you got up earlier or something differently, or you slept last night in a hotel and you didn't sleep well, and your brain can really easily convince you that you need to go to sleep.
And if you're sitting near the wing with the engine right there and it's just like this white noise machine. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they're absolutely designed to go to sleep. So watching videos or listening to podcasts or audiobooks might have the same effect on you. You know, if that's something you do before you go to sleep at night is listen to something, then you listen to something and your brain thinks, well, this is what we do before we go to sleep and it's dark and so let's go to sleep.
Yeah.
So do something else like writing or typing that uses your hands or uses another part of your body so that your brain has to stay awake and it gets the clue, stay awake.
Exactly. So now we're going to talk about what to choose, right? So we said don't plan on working on certain things. This is where we say do choose to work on work that can be easily broken up into short chunks or resumed easily after an interruption. This is so critical. You get to the gate, you sit down, you've got, 30 minutes before you board. You can't really get into something deep. You want to just be able to bite off little chunks and you want to be able to pick it back up when you get settled on the plane. You want to choose work that will take approximately the same length of time as the flight. So you know how long the duration of the flight's going to be. You can appropriately plan for that time. Now, we know that work expands to fill the time available, and having a 4-hour flight to do 2 hours worth of work just means that the work will take twice as long as it needs to. So you want to plan for that and have more, even if it's smaller chunks of different work, but have kind of a sequence of things that you want to run through and probably a priority, right?
Yeah.
Like on your sheet of paper that we recommended, right? Not digital, paper. That's old school thinking. But have it on there and prioritize it in terms of what if you can, if all the circumstances or all the conditions are met to work on this thing, that's what I'm going to work on. And so that's what I work on, and then this, and then that.
Choose work that needs only a limited amount of space, right? There is work that's a low electrical power requirement, but requires more space than you will generally have. So I was taking notes from a book. Oh, that was my plan. It wasn't smart plan, because by the time you've opened a book and your notebook, there isn't actually enough room on the tray table to have both. And then they bring you a drink, and then that's
Right.
not happening. So think about how much space you need, and also think about the equipment that you need. Like creating diagrams with colored pencils is probably not what you want to be doing, even though it probably takes up less space, because those colored pencils disappear on airplanes. And even when you're in business and there's all these cubby holes that you get on an international flight, that they still disappear. So
Yep.
one or something that only needs one pen is probably better than something that needs 20.
Yeah, absolutely. Something I just thought of that I realized, and I don't think it's anywhere else in this cast, is if they come around, like if you're sitting in business or first class and they come around and they offer you a hot towel, keep in mind you're going to have a place to put that. And if you are working on paper or books or something where moisture would damage or cause that like little warped wrinkle effect, keep in mind that could happen.
Yeah, it better not be the best copy, right?
Yeah.
So by now you might have guessed what Andrew does on the way home from a training delivery. He writes thank you cards to attendees and sponsors and referrers, because writing cards only takes a little bit of space. It only requires the cards and a pen. It can easily be resumed when he's interrupted, does not take complex thought, and it means that the admin of the trip is done by the time he gets home.
Yeah. So as presenters, when we're writing, we're not worried about our handwriting, right? I probably have the worst handwriting of anyone on the team, but it's legible. You can read it, right? And the sentiment, the thought behind it is worth way more than worrying a little bit about a little turbulence or whether something's going to be perfectly, neat and orderly.
I was just thinking that you always hear people say, my handwriting is terrible, but you never hear anyone say her or his handwriting is terrible unless they're a doctor, in which case...
That's a great point.
Right? Nobody ever criticizes anybody else's handwriting because they're not bothered by it. It's only ourselves. So don't worry about it.
Yeah, surely that math doesn't add up.
Yes,
right?
Exactly.
If everyone's saying their handwriting is bad, someone should be saying that person's handwriting is bad.
So you have a stack of cards and stamps, right?
Yeah. So when we leave for a flight, when we leave for a trip, we bring thank you cards, we bring envelopes, we bring address labels that are pre-printed before the event. And in most cases, stamps, there are a few exceptions if you're traveling like out of the country and you won't be able to, you may not have the stamps to mail from that country, or it may not make sense to mail it from that country. But all those things notwithstanding, everything we need to write those thank you notes and then drop them in the mail. I park at the airport and then I'm driving back to my house and there's a post office with a drive-through mail slot right there. It's like it was designed for me. I mean, it's so easy, so convenient. And so I just drop them in the mail right then and there, which to your earlier point makes it so when I get home, and if I get home before bedtimes for the kids, and they run up and they say, Dad, hey, how was your trip? And then let me tell you about school and all this stuff. I can listen unencumbered. I'm not thinking about, I got to make sure I get this done, or I got to make sure I put this in this place so I don't forget about it, right? I can be there.
For those of you with kids, that's the thing.
That's what you want.
Yeah. So we'll go back right to the beginning. You have an obligation to work on a flight that's taken for company purposes. If you don't, then effectively you owe the company hours after the working day or at the weekend. So who wants to do that? With some thought and preparation, you can use the time wisely and you can make your return even easier. Why would you sleep or play solitaire? Who knows? If you want to get ahead, there are no free days or free hours. And the competition is not snoozing.
That's right.
Thanks, Andrew. This was fun.
Thanks, Wendy.
That's all for this week. We'll be back next week with a new topic. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.